Welcome to The Creative Influencer, where we discuss all things creative with an emphasis on influencers. The Creative Influencer is hosted by John Pfeiffer. John is an entertainment attorney in Santa Monica, California, who represents influencers and other creatives.
This is episode 3 of the third season of the Creative Influencer podcast. Today we interview Linnea Miron. Linnea talks to us about her path from a corporate lawyer at one of the world's largest law firms to CEO of Real Wellness, a cannabis company specializing in CBD products. Our conversation is wide-ranging from astrology to her use of Instagram to market her company. This is an interview that I think you're really going to enjoy. I am joined today by Linnea Miron. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you about, I'm going to hit the big topics, and then we'll come back. You are the CEO of Real Wellness. Mm-hmm. You are a Pisces. Mm-hmm. You told me offline a week or two ago that makes you very visual. Mm-hmm. And that your social media platform of choice is Instagram. Mm-hmm. And that you are married to Ricky Williams.
Correct.
Okay. So, I want to understand who you are now. I've got to take you through your path.
Great.
Okay. You are from where originally?
Originally from Maryland.
And we just had a conversation about getting your birth certificate if you wanted to get a reading.
Right.
Let's just, to save people, if they want to get their birth certificate, what kind of birth certificate should they get to show their time?
Yes. So you want to make sure that when you call the state to get your birth certificate, let them know that you're doing it because you want the birth certificate, the version of it, to include your birth moment. The default typically will be to give you an abbreviated version of the birth certificate that does not include that. So in Maryland, it was called a book copy. And that term may be used in other states as well, but it's, you get the gist of.
So you get the time you were born.
Yeah. So just to make sure you point that out to the person on the phone.
So you were definitely born in Maryland.
Definitely born. Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins. Where were you raised?
I was raised in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and in Annapolis.
And then I read where you went to Duke.
Mm-hmm.
My younger son went to Duke.
Yeah.
How did you pick Duke?
I feel like it picked me. I'm trying to remember what brought me down to the campus with my mother. I went and I just knew when I stepped onto the campus. That's actually a really good question. I never really thought about it. There wasn't really a logical reason for it other than it sort of drew me there. Similar to how I'd say I felt drawn to LA later in life. I didn't have a person that I knew or a sibling or any sort of tie. I didn't have a family tie or connection. Wasn't a basketball fan at the time, even though that was the religion of the school. But I stepped onto the campus and I felt almost like maybe it is sort of those pings that we talk, right. The tingle of
this is the right place.
This is, yes, that there, and to realize there is a geolocation to places when you feel that, to recognize that.
What did you study there?
I studied public policy.
And then you went to law school.
And then I went to law
school. Did you take
school.
time off in between?
Nope.
Straight through?
Just kept on studying, kept on going.
Where'd you go?
I went to Vanderbilt for law school.
And again, how did you pick Vanderbilt?
That one, actually, I picked the highest ranked school I got into. I wanted to go. I sort of knew the game of getting into the legal world.
There's a game of law school?
Yeah, of just, and what are you going to use this degree for, right? And I was understanding, having gone through 4 years at Duke, I was around a lot of privileged people, a lot of wealthy people, and I understood certain things about the status game, so to speak, and that certain things carried weight. A degree from a certain school. I think that's changing now, but in the 90s, I understood that could open doors for me.
Right.
And so when I applied to law school, I realized, okay, going to a top 25 law school was just going to open certain doors, and to do whatever I could to get into the most nationally recognized, so that when I went to apply for jobs at law firms, it would make it that much easier to get offers.
And it did open a door for you at a law firm, a big firm.
Yeah. And interestingly, it did in a very specific way. So this was when 9/11 was happening. I was interviewing for my first job out in the real world in the couple of days after 9/11 had happened. And all of these lawyers were coming in recruiting. It's the recruiting season is in September for the where you're going to be working the following summer. And I think it was the last interview I had. It was just a series of speed dating where you sit down with the lawyer, they ask you a bunch of questions, they look at your resume. And I think it was the last one I had, and it was with a guy named Hugh Marbury. And he was a litigation partner at a firm that at the time was called Piper and Marbury. And it was going through a series of mergers to the point where it became Piper, Marbury, Rudnick, and Wolf. Then it became Piper, Rudnick. Then it became DLA Piper. Ultimately, where I ended up working, it was called DLA Piper. But just merger after merger to the point where I had a job at the biggest law firm in the world by the time the job rolled around. So I'm talking to Hugh Marbury, who interestingly has the same last name as the Piper and Marbury of the firm. And I realized that the GPA that I have at Vanderbilt doesn't necessarily justify me getting that interview with this very select law firm, which was the biggest law firm in the state of Maryland at the time, and the place that I wanted to be, but didn't think I had what it took to be there based on my GPA and so forth. And we sit down, and he's like, well, Linnea, I've gone through, I had a lot of resumes, and you're my last interview of the day and all of that, but the specific reason why I'm interviewing you is I was flipping through all these resumes and trying to choose which students to interview today. And my wife picked them up and was looking at them, and she pulled yours out because, as it turns out, she noticed at the top of your resume, you went to her high school, Severn. You went to Duke, where she went to college, and you're now at Vanderbilt, where I went to law school. So it was through this little personal thing where they just said, hey, this one looks a little different. You should do it. Let's just toss her in. And then that little bit of just luck and access to have that interview, Hugh and I hit it off. And because it was the last interview of the day, instead of it being forced into being 10 or 15 minutes, we went for an hour and I got an offer. And so it's just, things like that happen, and have been critical points of my path when I look at things that you could call serendipitous or just the right person coming along and noticing. But then what did I do to, once I was given the gift of the access, I then had to step up and show up and prove to them that I was worth them taking the time to get to know or to take a chance on or a job on.
Why did you pick law?
I have a couple layers to that. One, the college student in me that didn't want to stop being in college and didn't want to start being in the real world yet, knew she was good at reading and writing and knew that she wanted a higher degree, and it wasn't going to be in medicine, and it wasn't going to be business school because you typically don't go straight to business school. So some of it was process of elimination. It wasn't, I want to be the next Sandra Day O'Connor. It was just, this seems like the next logical step in a path that is now making more sense to me in hindsight as to why I chose those things at those points in time. And I think part of what I was doing at the time in my 20s was building a foundation of making certain choices, certain conventional choices, high-level status choices in order to have people take me seriously. In part so that I could do certain things like this at this point in my life, and people will listen because I've gone through exactly a top 10 school, top 20 law school, worked for 15 years in big law and survived it and still have good things to say about it when a lot of people throw in the towel pretty quick.
What kind of law did you practice?
Commercial real estate.
At some point you moved to Los Angeles, you mentioned.
Yeah.
What drew you to Los Angeles?
That was another interesting moment. So I was working at the firm DLA Piper, as I was saying. I got the job offer as a summer associate. I became a full-time associate. They had a need in the commercial real estate group, and it was a great fit for me. And I would say about second year, this was when real estate was booming. So this was 2005, and it was the peak right before the crash. So real estate lawyers are in high demand. We're very busy. We're billing a lot of hours, huge deals. Real estate values are going up. The size of the deals are getting bigger. And firms are flush with cash. And so when they throw a lot of retreats and they fly everybody out to one location, and there's a lot of food and drinking and the camaraderie and the meeting of everybody and all of that goes on. Those are not as common now when there isn't excess cash to spend. But that particular year, the firm had flew all of its real estate attorneys from around the country to Los Angeles to stay at the Ritz-Carlton in Marina Del Rey. And I had never been to LA before, and I was 28. And so the group from Baltimore, I was working in the Baltimore office of DLA, hundreds and hundreds, I think maybe 400 real estate attorneys. We all fly there, we're all meeting. And again, one of those sort of serendipitous moments where I was seated at a table, the first dinner. You're not allowed to sit at a table with anybody from your office. So I sit down, and the managing partner of the Los Angeles office, Rich Mendelson, is on my left, and a partner from New York is on my right, and we're all kind of looking at each other's name tags, and they're all like, Baltimore, how's that? Because New York, I'm like ganged up by New York and LA, and I'm like, actually, sometimes we call it Balta-less. I get it. I'm not in love with it either. And I think the fact that I rolled with that joke and also signaled to them, oh, I'm not going to, say Baltimore's my place, and said, actually, it's not. Like, I'm kind of a free agent, right? I mean, that was sort of what I was signaling at the time. I didn't really realize it until now. But just in saying that, by the next morning, and I was a third-year associate, by the next morning, the other managing partner of the office made a beeline to me and said, oh, my partner was saying he was talking to you, and we're looking to hire young associates in the LA office because real estate's booming. We need more of you. It'd be better to have one of our own than have to go out and recruit, because you already know the firm, you know how to use the computer system, you know the people. Like, it would be an easy transition. So it was better for them, and it was good for me too. So it was something that worked out for both. So I lateraled, or some people would say LA poached me from Baltimore. And
some might say that.
That commonly happens at these retreats. When dynamics are such that there's a chemistry between other people who say, I actually have more chemistry with these people and in this location. And when you work at a large company like that, that's one of the benefits, is that I seamlessly, on the firm's dime, they moved me out here. I didn't have to interview. It was one of those moments. And it just, when I came out here and I met that group, they were so welcoming. They took me around. They said, let's get you comfortable with LA, see how you like it. And it just felt right. It was one of those things where you just kind of know it by the end of the night. You don't have to think about it. You don't really have to.
When you moved here, where did you live?
Hollywood. I can't believe I did that. I moved into
For those of you who are not from LA, Hollywood is not what you would imagine.
It was not West Hollywood. It was Hollywood right by the ArcLight Cinema Dome next to the CNN building, and there was a bail bondsman on my street. I mean, it was right off of Sunset, and it was, it's like Sunset and Ivar, and this was 10 years ago or more than that. It's changed a lot. But I moved right into the thick of it, but to me, it was a dream to move into a Hollywood bungalow with palm trees in the background. Like, right. I thought I died and gone to heaven. We had an orange tree and a grapefruit tree in our backyard. And, it was just a idyllic little house. We rented off of Craigslist, and we knew nothing about LA. So it was close to downtown. That's where my loft. So we get on the 101 and just take it into downtown. But the longer I stayed in LA, the further and further I get as close to the water as possible at this point.
And we're sitting in your house in Venice right now.
Yes.
The canal coming right by us.
Right.
At some point you took a leave of absence.
Yeah.
To work on a political campaign.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Oh, well, so I guess you could say with my background in public policy, and I had worked at Amnesty International, and I had worked for Senator Sarbanes before he became famous for Sarbanes-Oxley. And so growing up in Annapolis, growing up around Capitol Hill, I was comfortable with politics and aware of things that were going on. But by the time I get to LA, I'm much more in a spiritual awakening at this point in my life. I'm now in my early 30s, and I'm, reading Buddhist books, and I've, reading The Power of Now, and starting to discover sort of that mainstream but really profound spiritual teachers. And I was talking to my stepmom Shelley about it one time when I was back in Maryland on a visit, and I was telling her all these Buddhist ideas that were just opening up my mind, and she said that sounds like something I read in a book called A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And she's like, hang on. And she goes into her library and comes back and hands me this worn copy of it. And, it's got this woman's face on it. And, I'm really into the esoteric, I'm kind of like, okay, whatever, but I take it back to LA with me. And then I'm going through a really difficult personal time. And I picked up the book and started reading it. And I think that's what happens in those moments when you really hit a low point, and the book that's just been there for a bit suddenly is
there.
Like, pulsating at you, and you pick it up, and it blew my mind within a couple pages, just like The Power of Now did. And so it was a really profound, unexpected experience that I was open to and ready for. And then I thought, who is this woman? And, Googled her. And I'm like, well, look at that. She lives in Los Angeles, and she speaks every Monday night at this Saban on Wilshire, which just happens to be on my path driving home from downtown to I'm now living in Santa Monica, and it's on the way. So I start showing up at Marianne's Monday nights at the Saban as sort of my private time, my own personal church time after work, and it became a ritual for a while. And I typically wouldn't go with anybody. But it was what I would look forward to every week. And her books and her talks really expanded my mind and really helped me see things in a completely different way. I would not have been able to without those words. And when she then announced that she was running for Congress in October of 2013, it just was the melding of all of that. It was like, oh, I see how I can help her with this and do something that's extremely meaningful for me. I'd reached a point where I'd been a lawyer now for 10 years, and I was getting the bug to
do something else.
I knew I wasn't going to be doing that much longer. And I thought politics might be the avenue out of it. It's turned out to be something else, but it was the beginning of that, knowing that a chapter's closing in my education and my training in order to go out into the world instead of sitting in my office at a computer all day, drafting documents. It was time to start getting out there. And that was the beginning of that. I approached her after a campaign. I approached her with my resume after one of the first volunteer meetings, which was right down on Rose at what used to be called Full Circle. And I just went up to her and just handed her my resume, and I just said, I'd love to work on your campaign. And I heard from her the very next day. It was pretty quick. And, that was one of the most profound, eye-opening experiences I ever had. So different from working in a corporate law firm. But it was, in hindsight now, I see what I was doing was preparing myself for startup life. That showed me a campaign is very similar in many ways to starting a company, and the freneticness of starting a company with very little funding and on an idea, right? A political campaign is like a new brand. It's branding. So I learned a tremendous amount at the time, not knowing I was then going to use so much of that in order to become CEO of my own campaign or my own brand, several years later.
Shifting gears a second.
Yeah.
What did you go back to the law firm after that?
Yeah. So we ran a great campaign. It was the Jungle Primaries, 20 candidates. It was the one that Ted Lieu won, Henry Waxman's seat. And we came in fourth out of approximately 20, which was fantastic. But in the primary in June of 2014, you only take the top two. So it was Ted Lieu, and then the Republican candidate. They went toe to toe. Everyone knew Ted was going to win it at that point because there were so many Democrats and progressives, and the one Republican kind of inched in, but didn't have a chance. But when she lost the primary, it was one of those like kind of weird moments where a friend of mine who's a filmmaker, he said, it's very similar to when you finish wrapping a movie. It's like you hit a wall and you know it's coming, but you don't really realize it. And there's a little bit of sort of like kind of PTSD from it, where it's like, how do you step back into the real world after being in a campaign, which is a very insular, it's a little, I don't mean to use cultish in a bad way,
right?
But you're in this world and you're kind of out of it as far as what's going on with everybody else in your life. And then when that boom just ends just like that, and then you have to re-entry into the world, it's hard. And so she lost the primary, and I got an email from that same managing partner that was sitting on my left in that very first dinner. Same guy sends me an email, and he's like, "So sorry to hear your candidate lost. When are you coming back? Like, are you coming back tomorrow?"
Yeah.
Okay.
It's time to get back to work.
Time to get back in it, right? Time to get back in, pulling me back in. Hey, you want that paycheck back again? You want all that, sit back down in your office. You've been out in the world. Let's get back to all of this. And I actually said I need 2 weeks to transition myself mentally. Mm-hmm. And for those 2 weeks, a lot of it, I just laid down. I rest. I kind of did a little hibernation. And then I went back, and that was June of 14. And I stayed in it on a part-time basis. So one of the ways I sort of managed even though I came back, is I went at 70%. So I said to the law firm, I'd like to take a 30% pay cut and have a 30% reduction in my billable hours obligation. So that, which a lot of people do now, they afford it to a lot of mothers now as well. And I think I was one of the first who ever asked for it without being a mother, because I wanted to give time to creation, to something else outside of my job. Only it wasn't creation of a child. It was creation of myself. And what am I going to be doing? What am I really meant to be doing here? To spend time doing yoga, meditation, to get the ideas of what am I doing next? It's not going to be that political route like I thought it was, but I'm starting to hone in on it.
Transition. Are you a football fan?
No.
That's what I suspected.
No.
Do you ever watch football?
If I have to.
I I heard an interview where you said that you met Ricky at a party.
Yeah.
Did you know he was a football player?
Yes.
I mean, he's a big guy.
Yes. Yes.
And that he asked you what your sign was.
Yes. Yes. He said, "What is your sun sign?" That I always said. And I hadn't heard anyone say it that way. So I just said, "I don't know what a sun sign is." I mean, maybe if I'd paused for a minute, I could have figured it out, but it was saying, And I said, I don't know what a sun sign is, but my sign, when people ask me that, I say Pisces, but I admitted I had no idea what that word means, all the things that word means, the archetypal field.
Was that your first real introduction to astrology?
Yes. Yes. And that's at 38 years old. Yeah. I'm trying to think if I knew anything about it. No, I didn't. I didn't.
At what point did you become a couple?
What do you mean?
That you started dating?
In 2016.
Had Ricky done your chart before you started dating?
Done my chart. Well, with him, it's if you're talking to him, right? So
he will ask you details.
Yeah. So like when you're friends with Ricky or if you're a child of his, a lot of people in his life have never had their chart done, but because he has it, he is dropping little snippets all the time, right? So once you meet him and you start an exchange and conversation, like we met, then we didn't see each other for a while, then we saw each other again a few months later, then we didn't see each other, but each time I would see him, we would have a little bit more, but it wasn't like a printout of the chart and let's do this. He does it in a very conversational way, which is
the sneaky way.
Which is what I notice most people don't do, but it's actually, I think, if you're good enough to do it, that's the thing. You have to really know what you're talking about to do it that way. But if you can sit and have a conversation with someone, the learning comes through in ways. It's another way to have it come through without it, because people think, I have to have a traditional chart reading. And what we're learning is that there are many different ways to learn about yourself versus an astrologer just talking straight at you for 90 minutes and you just sit there, and what people are learning, and especially with Ricky being a Gemini, is that he loves the conversation. He loves the back and forth of it. So, I mean, from day one, he tends to know most people's sun signs right off the bat. Like, I tell that story because now we're together, but I see him do it we do it with a lot of people we meet. We get their information, and then once we're texting with them and becoming friends and starting to get to know them, we drop them little things or tell them this or say, oh, go read about that or whatever, and then the learning just kind of starts from there. And then some people want a reading right away, but some people don't. They want to keep learning it in different ways. And that's what's fun about this age is now with these smartphones. The smartphones have just changed everything.
Constant communication.
And the ability,
good or ill.
the access, the access to a fire hose of information that we just didn't have, that I think sometimes we forget we didn't have.
Right.
Unlimited free information.
Changes conversations when you're at lunch. Instead of arguing over something and then nobody ever resolves it, well, let me Google that.
Yeah.
What year did you get married?
We got married in June of 2017.
And then you have started a company called Real Wellness?
Yes.
When did you start the company?
Well, the concept, I remember the moment that the words were first uttered, I believe was in August of that same year, maybe 2 months later.
How did it come up? When you said the words were first uttered, how do you mean?
Well, when we got married, one thing we did do, we which I appreciated with him, and I believe more couples are going to start doing this, is we got married, and then we sat down and we said, let's look at the chart of our relationship. It's called a composite chart. And you blend the two charts of people together. Everybody can do it. We would have a composite chart, right? You look at it and you see where's the action happening. So you look to see where the sun is. You look to see where the moon is. And that's going to indicate for you where the energy of the relationship of these two people, the entity between the two people, where it's going to flourish and grow and, all of that. And he said, our relationship sun is in Aries. So even though I'm a Pisces and he's a Gemini, when we come together, we are Aries. And we are Aries in the 6th house, which is a work house. It's a skill development house. It's the house of Virgo. It's about getting better at something. Getting better at something that you then can offer to the world and make a profound difference on the world. Aries, the pioneer, the daredevil, the warrior, right? So we discussed these things after we were married, and I believe that planted the seed of, in our imaginations of, okay, because what we realized coming out of our first marriages was, admittedly, we went into them looking back now unconsciously, meaning, why am I even marrying this person? For what purpose? What are we doing? Like, what are we excited about creating in the world together? So when we've come together now in this relationship, we said, okay, we're going to do this differently than the last time with our first spouses. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, it just sort of planted an awareness in my mind, like I said, a visual. And that chart is taped up in our kitchen. I'll show you before you leave. And I see it every day as a reminder, that's us. And meaning Aries, tension, we're not a couple that you're ever going to see. I would suspect you're never going to see us book a vacation at the Four Seasons in Jamaica and just sit in beach chairs for 5 days straight and read romance, a romance novel or something. It's just not going to happen. Like, we're here. We acknowledged not that we're married, but we acknowledged that we're in a commitment to work in pioneering ways.
Tell me about the company.
That's what led to then, as that's happening, Ricky is speaking at, being asked to speak at cannabis conferences. And the businesswoman in me, I've got a lot of Capricorn in my chart too, besides that Pisces. The Capricorn in me is watching this, and I'm seeing this go down, and I'm watching the way people are responding to him. And all I can think is, energetically, we've got to do something with this, and we can also monetize it for our own benefit, right? There could be profit in this, right? But I also see there's something really beautiful unfolding. So we talk about it, and we realize he wants to make medicine, and he's realizing he knows how to do it. And after all these years of study, we start realizing that, and friends start coming to us. We start making things for them. We start seeing them get better very quickly, like within 12 hours or within 48 hours. And all that comes together at the same time. We then, in all of these conference meetings, we start meeting people who said, hey, partner with us. We got the resources to do it. You guys have the great story. You guys have there is only one Ricky Williams in this industry. And it turns out he's not endorsing this. He's actually the maker of it. Come partner with us. We'll give you the resources to do it. So we partnered with a group called Alco. We chose them because of the high quality of what they were doing in this space. They were very different from anyone else we had met. They were based in Ricky's hometown of San Diego, and they just opened their doors to us and allowed us to do R&D with them and to do something extremely innovative that they had never done before. And that's what I loved about them, is that they were willing to, they knew how to make cannabis products, but we said, we want you to also source herbs and extract other herbs, not just cannabis. And they thought, okay, we'll try it. If we can do that, we could do this. And I loved that attitude that they'd never done it before. And they were like, we see the value in this and we're willing to do it when no one else is doing it yet. So they were a wonderful first partner in that meeting in August that Ricky and I had with them, where we realized we had something special. And in sort of a playoff of Ricky's RW initials, that it, in talking about what it was that we were creating, it just, the words just kind of, came out that this truly is real wellness. It's a new way to think about it. And we're going to be part of introducing that new way of thinking about it to the mainstream.
I'm looking because I've heard you describe Ricky's position in the company as the chief herbal officer. Mm-hmm. But you're the CEO.
Yeah.
You're the boss. How does it work when you're working with your spouse? I mean, obviously, how do you make that work?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember one day very specifically where Ricky said something to me, and it just got me further into that space that I can see a lot of people struggle with. And I've just noticed Ricky and I are very different from most couples. So when people kind of compare us to couples that run companies together, it's kind of an apples and oranges thing in what I'm finding. And here's why. So we were raising money for the company. This was, it falls on the CEO to raise money. And I've never done this before. And I had a lot of doubts about my ability to do it. And I was in a meditation one morning, and in the meditation, a message came that said, "All right, Linnea, if you want to get the money you need to get this company off the ground, $500,000, stop going to all these other people that you've talked to and pitch the lawyers that you work with that you're about to quit and leave to go start this company." And I was like fighting with the message. I was like, no, that sounds no. But also I knew as soon as it came in, I also knew it was a good idea, but it was one that I had to push myself to do and had to evolve to feel comfortable pitching my existing colleagues. That just felt so
How did you do that? How did you walk the line of knowing that you're pitching for a company that you're going to leave the firm for?
It was a really interesting thing. At first I thought, is this crazy? So when I come back from meditations, Ricky's usually waiting here and he's like, okay, what came up in meditation? Like what messages came through, and let's talk about it. And I said, well, there was an interesting one today. And I said, this message came in that we will be successful in fundraising if we go to Seyfarth. I've now left DLA Piper, and this group is now at a firm called Seyfarth Shaw. If you go to Seyfarth with Ricky, with Link, the CEO of Alco, who was our partner, and with our COO at the time, take all four, right? So I take the three men in with me. And I said, what do you think? And you know what Ricky said to me? He was like, Linnea, in this conversation, we are not husband and wife. You are a CEO talking to your employee. So if you believe that it is going to be successful and beneficial to the company, then you tell me that's what we're doing. And he said, we have to be mindful of the distinction between when we are in CEO employee mode
versus husband and wife.
Versus husband and wife. And I think a very skilled couple is able, the real mastery is if you can flip constantly like this. You don't have to say, well, we're going to be this way from 9 to 5, and at 5 o'clock, ding, it switches back. It doesn't work that way. So that was such a helpful thing that he said, and he's a rare man in that he empowers women in ways, and I don't mean that as a detractor to men. I just see most men they just don't know how to. They're learning how to now, and it's a scary time, to be doing this. But Ricky, he understood how in doing that and having me click into that mindset that you need to have a CEO in that mindset. And I appreciate that because I'm seeing now as women and minorities who aren't used to being put in leadership positions, to be able to have people around you who see that, but see your potential and kind of nudge you up there is so needed. And that's what he did. But to the benefit and to the success of our company. But that's part of why our company is successful and why so many aren't, is because the power dynamics up at the top are creating a lot of inefficiencies and wasted time and imbalanced power plays that are actually harming the ability of the company to grow.
Now, as CEO, you've chosen Instagram as one of your big marketing platforms.
Yeah.
Why Instagram?
For brand building and for the nature of the brand that we have, I also believe that I'm a avid student of Gary Vee. And if you sort of follow the information that he puts out there on social media about the natures of all the different platforms, and you have a different audience for each one, and you have a different tone for each one. Instagram to me is a great platform. I know people are very unhappy with the algorithm right now, and that they're not getting what people feel fair exposure in the feeds. But to me, if you're putting out quality content, it doesn't matter because people will go and seek you out. So it doesn't matter if, my followers, I'm way down on a feed of my follower. The content that we put out to me is timeless in a sense that it's high quality and it's not something that needs to be put out quickly and you kind of miss a window and there's substance to what we're doing. So I love Instagram for the versatility of the tools that you can create your own content for free and put it up and distribute it for free. That just blows my mind as a 41-year-old that exists, that I can create all of that with free programs and teach myself how to record content, grab other content, splice it, subtitle it, always with putting something out there to open people's minds, to provide them with access to information we believe is going to be beneficial for them.
And you have educating. Testimonial Tuesdays on Instagram, a dispensary of the week, and Facebook Live, Ricky on Fridays.
Some of those are old because we're no longer a dispensary brand. So we used to do those, but now that we're a CBD only brand, we're now switching from dispensaries because when we launched and now we feature like the antidote in on Melrose, right? It's a CBD store on Melrose that you don't need. It's a non-dispensary. It's open to anybody. Anybody can go in.
Because what I did is I started at the very start of your feed.
Yeah.
And then would scroll all the way, looking at each one. You could see it subtly shift.
Yeah. Well, it's subtle, but it's also major. I mean, you bring up a thing that we've been talking a lot about right now at this stage in the company, because when we launched in March of 2018, we were a Southern California dispensary brand. That's what we at the time believed that we were going to expand into, we were going to get into more and more and more and more dispensaries, right? 4 out of the 6 products had THC in them. What we found was the 2 that were CBD only were way outselling the THC products, even in the dispensaries. So people were buying CBD only formulas and paying the hefty dispensary tax on top of it. That's how much they loved the salve and the optimized tonic. So as this is happening and we're seeing the market prefers these, and maybe the people coming into the dispensaries or who we are trying to attract, which is me and my demographic, I'm noticing the women that look like me aren't coming into the dispensaries still. They will eventually, but we see something in the future that is taking a long time to happen in California, especially, which has just been it's such a roller coaster for people in the industry in this state, as we're now seeing that some of the taxes are up to 50%. It's crazy. So as we're seeing people aren't coming in, we audit it against our mission. And our mission is to get these formulas into as many people's hands as possible. And the dispensary channels are simply way too narrow for that. When we had the ability to simply expand our CBD line, our competitors in the dispensaries, most of them were strictly THC brands. They did not have any sort of CBD arm to them. So those brands have been riding this out in a very risky way, hoping for federal legalization as quickly as possible, hoping for the taxes to go down, and it's not happening, and they are going belly up, belly up, belly up, and we're seeing this happen. We smartly, at the beginning of this, I give Ricky credit for this, he said, I don't want this to be just a THC only brand. We need to have CBD only offerings for people. I actually voted against it. I was like, no, let's just do THC. And he had the foresight to see that CBD was going to expand, and thank God he said something and insisted on it, and we went with it, because then we were able to, very easily drop off the THC formulas and give all attention to the CBD, whereas now what you're seeing, and that's part of our story, right? But now you're seeing a lot of brands in the THC space who waited too long and are seeing the writing on the wall, and they're trying to quote unquote pivot into CBD, but you have to have a good story. And if you're in CBD just to not go bankrupt, you're not going to last.
It's not as good a story.
It's not as good a story. So, we're seeing a lot of scrambling right now in the industry. And, it reminds me of when we went through the Great Recession 12 years ago when I was a commercial real estate attorney. So I was a commercial real estate attorney when real estate tanked, and now I'm a CEO in the cannabis industry, as we're seeing something very similar that's going to happen in 2020. And I've been here before, and I know how to be successful in the face of that. I've done this before, and I've learned that I have an ability, also through the people I surround myself with, forward-thinking people like Ricky and other people on our team, to pivot in advance before everyone else does, and to be on the up elevator when most people are going down. And that's what's happening right now in the industry.
And you made the pivot to 100% CBD how long ago?
When did they, it wasn't like a one-day thing, because, what was happening in the dispensaries was we just were putting less and less, we were refilling less and less orders. So it just kind of petered. But it's been several months. It's been several months where we revamped our website. It's been several months. Yeah. I don't know the exact day, but
I'm going to completely shift gears on you. I'm going to go 73 questions a la Vogue.
What's that?
Oh, Vogue they'll ask
73.
They'll ask 73 questions of like celebrities. Okay. I'm not going to ask 73 questions.
Okay, I was like, that's a lot of questions.
No. What question would you most like to know the answer to?
Gosh, there's so
I
many
stumped
things.
my guest.
Well, there's so many where I'm like, my first thoughts go like to way out there, like metaphysical, and it's like that. I'm kind of like, is that where we want to go? Oh gosh, there's so many good. There's so many. I mean, my mind, goes to. I'd like to know. I'd like to know information about sort of where we go when we leave our bodies. Sort of the information around the cycle of what I feel and believe is a reincarnation cycle, or I would like an explanation of how that works. Because I feel it works, but I want I want to understand
concrete
it. Yeah,
answers.
I've got a lot of Capricorn in me, so it's like I need to see it. I need to like a lot of Earth, right? Where it's like I need something a little more concrete with it, but kind of issues around that of like how long until we reincarnate again, or how in our understanding of Earth time, so to speak, how long until that, where it's like, my dad passed away 3 years ago, and sometimes Ricky and I are like, well, where are we going to see him turn up as, and where's he going to turn up, and what's he going to look like this time, or that sort of thing, or will it be like the next lifetime,
Yeah. What's your guilty pleasure?
Well, guilty. I mean, cannabis, but I guess it certainly is a medicine for me. But it's such a pleasurable medicine that I think sometimes we feel guilty of something we're taught isn't supposed to be good for us. Actually, does feel good for us.
So, what are you working on right now?
With Real Wellness, yeah. We are about to launch in about a week, I believe. Our response to Xanax and to anti-anxiety medication that's out there. That's going to come out in about a week online. It's called Serenity CBD. So we're adding to our repertoire of formulas, which we're really excited about. That's a specific thing that we're working on. And then on a larger scale, on a company scale, we're spending a great amount of time meeting with people, talking to people, looking to open our doors and bring more people in and go from this very tiny company to something much larger, and expanding the team for people who want to be here and who want to, now that we're clear from that pivot from the dispensary world in California to the mainstream national. We didn't know CBD was going to be in drugstores this quickly when we launched. We knew something was coming, but we didn't know this exactly. Now that this has happened and people are showing up, the right partners are showing up, it's a very exciting time of expansion through strategic partnerships with people in the space that we feel are aligned with our vision that this is the new wave of medicine for people.
And what is the web address, the URL for Real Wellness?
Oh gosh, my team's going to get so mad at me because we just changed it. I believe it's rwrealwellnesscbd.com. But I believe if you also type in...
If you just Google Real Wellness, it'll come up.
If you just type in Real Wellness, Ricky Williams, rw.life, all those things, it will come up. My name, it will come up.
And where can they find you on Instagram?
And then Instagram, that is at RW Real Wellness. I know that one. I know that one, yeah.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
That's it for this time. If you enjoyed our podcast, please write a review on iTunes and tell your friends to subscribe. If you have any questions about influencers or suggestions for future episodes, email them to John at Pfeiffer@pfeifferlaw.com. Thank you for listening.